Hey guys, Ariel over here at Finance. Today I want to do another little look at a vegetable side that I like to do with lots of meals. This is butternut squash. You can do the exact same thing with all kinds of different squash, and I do like to do all kinds of different squash. Butternut's probably my personal favorite. I just think compared to other squashes, I'm doing there is just cutting off the little stem end. That's where it would have been attached to the vine it grew on. And then I want to split this in half. Butternut, I think, has a little bit more of a sweet flavor, sweeter and richer and nuttier compared to some squashes, but I like to eat them all. There's whole tons of, often they're not available in a grocery store other than in the fall, which is when they're in season, though they store well all winter. Just all kinds of funny colors and shapes and lumpy and bumpy things, and a whole lot of those are edible. So when you split it in half on a butternut, the big thick neck up here is just all good squash flesh, and down here at the bottom where you see that little hole is the seeds. Now I often save the seeds and make like a roasted pumpkin seed. Oops. But this particular one doesn't have very mature seeds in there. They kind of look a little bit undeveloped, so I don't know if I'll bother. Oh, that looks better. Anyway, to roast this, I'm going to just scrape the seeds out. I usually just use a spoon. The squash flesh is pretty hard when it's raw. As you can see, cutting it is, it takes a little bit of effort. And I'm just going to scrape all the seeds out of there. And then to bake this, I'm going to lay it cut side down on my pan. So that pan kind of works to seal all the juices in and kind of steam itself, from the inside as it is cooking. If you left it cut side up, I think it would dry out a lot quicker. If you were putting it in a closed pan, maybe you could do that. But I usually just do this on an open, not quite a cookie sheet, because you want a little bit of an edge, because there is often a little bit of juice that comes out and it'll drip onto your oven bottom if you've got nothing to catch it, but it's not a lot. So I think that's a jelly roll pan. That works pretty well. So lay my squashes down there. There we go. That's all I do to prep them, and they are going to pop in the oven here. Depends a little bit on the size and thickness of the particular squash you are cooking. Heard it light, but since I got a propane oven, I like to double check and be sure I can see flames. I'm going to bake those at 350. I think they'll probably take about 45 minutes or so. You can easily tell when it's done by just sticking a fork in, and if it feels soft, you're good to go. If it's still really firm, you need to go a little longer. Like I said, that'll vary a good bit depending on the size of the particular squash you are cooking at the moment. But then, because I didn't season it or anything, it's just plain squash, once it's done baking, you could do a whole lot of different things with it. You could, probably what I do mostly is just scoop out the flesh and season it with a little bit of butter and a little bit of salt and eat it that way. You could season it with cinnamon. You could do all kinds of other spices. You could mix it in with other things, but I just use it as kind of a smashed squash side, kind of like a mashed potato, except that it's pretty bright orange and tastes very different than a mashed potato. But with the same kind of thing. Tonight for dinner, I am having a friend over. People always ask about the volume of food I cook. I am pretty much always cooking for somebody else. Whether I have guests coming over here or I'm making food for somebody else. I have traded meals for gym memberships and for snow plowing on my lane and all kinds of things. So I am usually cooking for several people at the very least. And I like to have some leftovers, because that's often what I eat for lunch. So what you saw me do there, I changed my mind here. I think I am going to save those seeds. They looked a little better than I first thought. So that's just kind of the membrane that held them all together in their little womb in the squash where they were, and my stem end. So those are the only parts I'm going to compost. Squashes are a little bit sticky for sure inside. And now while that is baking, I like to salt my squash seeds, so I'm just going to get a little bowl and put all of these in here. And I'm going to soak them for about a day with some water and salt. This is nothing real particular, I just put enough water in there to kind of cover the seeds. And I'm just going to use some of my Redmond real salt here. And that's probably plenty, that's a good teaspoon. Just going to put that in there and let that dissolve. That kind of helps soak the salt the whole way into the seed, which I personally like a little better than like roasting them and then salting the outside. But that's kind of a personal preference thing. You wouldn't have to salt them. I just do, and it takes a little time to soak into the flesh of the seed, so that's why I'm going to let them sit for about 24 hours. And then I'll just dry them out, and I often eat them raw, but you can also roast them in the oven, so maybe I'll do a video of doing that. But that's what I do with my squash seeds. Super simple. Now I'm going to have a snack. It's the kind of thing I like to keep in my van to munch on if I'm driving somewhere or something like that. Squash is in the oven. When it comes out, I'm just going to scoop it out. And like I said, I'm going to use a little butter and salt on it. It's going to be awesome. Having it with, I already cut up these veggies for our dinner. We've got purple and green cauliflower. It's going to be the pretty veggie side. So we're going to have orange, purple, and green. And then I'm doing some elk steaks on the grill out there because I have a lot of elk to cook. And usually what I do when I cook elk steak is to make a lot. This full pan, just cut them all here. And gonna grill them, and then I will have leftovers. I plan on that because I like to slice up the leftovers and do like a steak salad where I've got lettuce and a whole ton of other veggies and sometimes fruits and steak on top, and then my favorite ranch dressing, which I already did a video about, or whatever salad dressing you prefer on top of that. It makes a big giant pile in the middle of the plate, and it's an amazing meal. And I probably like steak salads almost as much or more than I like steak. So anytime I'm making steak, I make extra to have leftovers to do with a salad. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the meal here tonight, but I want to show you how I do squash and how simple it is. Squash is often very inexpensive. It's super nutritious. If you have any issues with digesting carbohydrates like white things, white potatoes, white breads and stuff, because they turn so quickly into sugars in your body, things like squashes and sweet potatoes, they're still a carbohydrate, but they digest much more slowly, so you get a much more even release of energy instead of a quick peak and then crash. So they're generally better for your health because of that. Plus, I think they just taste awesome. So that's what's for dinner tonight. So now dinner's done, and I just wanted to show you guys kind of the finished results here. After my squash baked, they were upside down like that. Pulled them out, flipped them over. This one, as you can see, I've already scooped out. We ate a bunch of it for dinner. And I just left the other one because I was planning to have it for leftovers so I could show you all. So once they're soft, you should be able to just take a spoon and kind of scrape everything out of the shell, because this outside shell part is it's just kind of crusty and papery. I don't think there'd be anything wrong with eating it. It just is not a very appetizing texture. But you can kind of scrape, all the guts here out right down to the shell. And then I just put the shells in the compost pile. But, it's, again, super easy. Just scoop that out, and then you can eat it just like that. I think, like many veggies, a little butter and salt is excellent. That's what we had for dinner this evening, but you could do anything else you like. Cinnamon is a good flavor with this, or, you could make all kinds of other combinations, but really most of the time I simply bake it like this, scrape it out, and eat it with a little butter and salt on it. So, that, if you've never done it, is how to cook squash. And like I said, this works for any kind of squash, pretty much any shape, any whatever. I do the same thing. I cut it in half, turn it upside down, bake it till it's soft, and then scrape the shells out, and there you go. Thanks for watching, folks. If you're interested in more info on my off-grid tiny house life, check out some of my other videos here. And if you like what you're seeing, click the little picture of my house to subscribe and then hit the little bell so YouTube actually notifies you every time there's a new video available. See y'all next time.